Ketchup. Most people assume ketchup started with tomatoes. It didn't. The earliest versions were salty fermented fish sauces from Southeast Asia. Sailors brought the idea back to the West, and American food companies later swapped in tomatoes, added sugar, and turned it into the condiment we know today. The reason ketchup is so thick comes down to simple chemistry. Tomatoes are almost entirely water, so cooking them down evaporates the liquid and leaves behind a concentrated, pulpy base. Soy sauce. Soy sauce isn't just salty, it's fermented, sometimes for months or even years. It began in ancient China as liquid pressed from fermented beans and grains, then spread across Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia, with each region developing its own style. That's why soy sauce tastes so much deeper than plain salt water ever could. Mayonnaise mayo shouldn't really work. Oil and water don't naturally mix, yet mayonnaise holds them together perfectly. The trick is egg yolk, which contains a molecule that can grip both water and fat at the same time, gluing the two together. Nobody fully agrees on where it was invented. Spain and France both claim it, but it was American factories that turned it into a global staple. Hollandaise. Despite the name, Hollandaise has nothing to do with Holland. It was developed in French kitchens, and the name likely nods to Dutch butter, which the French once considered the best around. It's made by slowly whisking egg yolks over gentle heat while streaming in melted butter, a process with almost no room for error since too much heat scrambles the eggs and breaks the sauce. Get it right, and you get the silky topping that makes Eggs Benedict what it is. Worcestershire Sauce. Worcestershire sauce was supposedly a mistake. As the story goes, a batch was mixed, forgotten in a basement, and rediscovered years later, tasting completely different and much better than intended. It was first made in England, reportedly inspired by a recipe from India. Its secret ingredient is fermented anchovies, which dissolve completely during aging and add deep, savory flavor without ever tasting fishy. That's why it shows up in Caesar dressing and Bloody Marys without anyone noticing. Fish sauce. Long before ketchup, fish sauce was the everyday condiment of the ancient world. The Romans put a version of it on almost everything. It disappeared from Europe for centuries but never left Asia, where it's still made the same slow way. Whole fish are packed in salt and left to break down naturally over months, releasing an intensely savory liquid. Today it shows up under different names across Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Bechamel. Bechamel doesn't really have a flavor of its own, and that's the whole point. It's a blank canvas that other flavors can be built on top of. Both French and Italian cooks were making versions of it by the 1600s and 1700s. The science is starch swelling with heat. Flour granules absorb liquid, expand, then burst, releasing starch that thickens the sauce into something smooth enough to coat a spoon. It's the hidden backbone of mac and cheese and lasagna, fresh salsa. Unlike most sauces, salsa is never cooked. Chili and tomato mixes date back to pre-colonial Mexico, and the sauce spread north with Mexican communities into the US, eventually outselling ketchup by the 1990s. The acid in tomatoes and added lime juice slows down spoilage, which is why fresh salsa holds up even though nothing about it is cooked or preserved with heat. Pesto. The pesto most of us buy in a jar is a shortcut. The traditional version is ground by hand in a marble mortar, giving it a texture a blender can't replicate. It comes from Genoa, Italy, where a specific type of local basil is considered essential. The oil in pesto actually helps slow down the browning that happens once basil is cut, which is why a well-made batch stays vividly green longer than you'd expect. Pan sauce. A pan sauce isn't something you add to a dish. It's made from the dish itself. After cooking meat, the browned bits stuck to the bottom of the pan hold concentrated flavor, and adding liquid instantly lifts them free, turning them into a sauce. This technique became standard in French kitchens and is still one of the first things taught in professional cooking schools, forming the base of gravies and steak sauces alike. Mole negro. Mole contains chocolate, but you'd never guess it from the taste. The chocolate adds bitterness and body rather than sweetness, working more like a structural ingredient than a flavor. Its roots trace to pre-colonial central Mexico, later blended with ingredients brought over from Spain. Some recipes call for more than 30 ingredients, and the dried chilies are toasted first to convert their raw bitterness into something deep and earthy.